Today, I'll be teaching you how to be a Kshots, a fan bearer in the Armenian Apostolic Church. Now, I want to give you a disclaimer that I cannot teach you 100% what you need to know to be a good Kshots, but I will give you some tips and I will try and give you as much knowledge as I can. Luckily for you, the Kshots is actually one of the easiest positions or roles on the altar. It's very simple. There's not that much to remember. It's very basic. So luckily for you, I'll be able to cover most of these. But like I said, the best way to study always is to watch the services, partaking in the services, paying attention so that you can make mental notes and understand exactly what you need to do. Now the Kshots is basically only used during the Badarak. The only other times are for processions which occur during the Badarak. So the only time where the Kshots will come down from the altar is during processions. Now, I'm not talking the gospel and the Sagi processions on the altar. I'm talking maybe a Catholicos has come to your church, maybe a bishop has come to your church, maybe there's a relic that has come to your church. That is when, or during the Tapor, during the Badarak, when there's a procession around the church, that is the only time where the Kshots comes down from the altar. And in those processions, and even the processions on the altar, the Kshots is always last in line, almost like a bodyguard to the action, to the relic or the important aspect, the important person or the important object. Let's say like Sagi, the chalice, or the gospel, the Avidaran, the relic, or the Catholicos, the bishop. You're always like a bodyguard standing in the back. Now, when you're walking, it's hard to do Kshots and walk at the same time while you're dragging it across the floor. A tip I like to give is just raise it up. It's not that heavy. Just raise it up, shake it. It's the same. Just raise it up a little bit and just walk like a staff almost, but you can shake it around. Now, a general tip is that this Kshots, which let me show you what's on the Kshots. The Kshots here can be seen as six-winged angel. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 3 on each side. And these are the greatest of the angels, the cherubim and the seraphim. The 6-winged angels are seen on the Kshots on both sides. And it's a general note that the angel's face should be towards the people at all times. Because the symbolism of the Kshots is that these bells ringing symbolize the angels in heaven singing with us during the Divine Liturgy. Not even in heaven. During the Divine Liturgy, the angels are within us. They're amongst us. We just can't see them. So it's a good reminder that the angels are with us, singing with the choir and praising God with us. So that is the meaning. But there's also, some say, a practical aspect of the Kshots. Back in the day, I'm talking 1,000, 2,000 years ago, churches might have been done outside. Outside, there's a lot of insects, and the wine attracts, let's say, bees and flies and insects like this. So the insects were always coming around the chalice, and it's unsanitary that way. It's also annoying. So what these fans would do would fan out the insects, basically. Drive them away, almost like a scarecrow, but for insects. So that's the meaning of the Kshots. The Kshots has 12 bells on it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And 12 is seen as a symbolic number representing the 12 tribes of Israel in the Old Testament, the 12 apostles in the New Testament. And these bells, like I said, symbolize the angels singing. The Kshots should always be done with your right hand. Let's go on the altar. Let me show you. So on the altar, you're going to be standing on the sides. Now, the altar might differ. We have side altars at our church at St. Stephen's. If you have side altars, try not to stand in front of the icons here. Try and stand a little bit in front of the icon. Also, try and stand as close as to the wall as you can. Because when it comes to the purvat has to get by you during High-Met or during different times the purvat has to go around the altar. So please, don't be standing in the middle like this in the way of the purvat. stand as close as you can to the wall here, without getting yourself burnt by this candle catching on fire. Stand as close as you can, shoulder to shoulder if you have another Kshots. And in most churches there are two pairs. There's one pair of Kshots, but at our church we have two pairs. So try to align yourself. Let's say when you're lined up, stand shoulder to shoulder. If you have the silver Kshots, stand the silver Kshots to stand behind the gold ones. So the gold ones, or the small ones, the shortest ones, so it should go shortest to tallest, basically, the Kshots, the fans. So stand as close as you can, shoulder to shoulder, between the altar and the icon, and you'll be in a perfect position. Now there's very little movements to the Kshots, but before I get to that, let me show you how to shape the Kshots. It's a common issue that your hand gets tired, but there are some tips to help with this. First of all, the Kshots is done during the choir. So every time the choir sings, the Kshots should be shaken. That is a general tip. Always when the choir sings, because the angels are singing, that's what it symbolizes, the Kshots should also be shaken. Always shaken with your right hand only. When it comes time to do the cross during the Badarak, if you're shaking the Kshots, it's better just to bow instead of making the cross. If you are shaking the Kshots, simply you can move the Kshots to your left hand, make the sign of the cross, move it back to your right hand. Shaking the Kshots. Do not shake your hand. Do not shake it like this. You do not want to shake it like this. Although it works, but it's distracting to do like this. It's not meant to be shaking that way. Shake it like twisting something. Just twist your wrist from 45 degrees, 45 or 90 degrees. Just shake it like this to this. Just like this. Almost just try and get the Seraphim like this. 90 degrees. Now, if your hand starts to get tired, you can do Kshots, just don't do it as hard. Now, there's two ways. You can do it very hard like this, very fast, but that will also damage the Kshots. I know it's very loud. Another general tip is that you should not be drowning out the choir with the sound of the Kshots. The Kshots is like a background accompaniment. Just like how a soloist sings, the piano is in the back playing background accompaniment. Same as for the Kshots. If you hear that the Kshots is drowning out the choir, tone it down a little bit. Especially if there's a soloist, play it even softer, like 50% volume. Now there's a time in the Badarak where that happens. There's a serious moment during the Badarak when the chalice is going to be moved from this notch here to the middle of the Quran. The soloist comes out, and at that point, you do soft Kshots, just like this, just slightly shake the Kshots. But besides that, shaking it, you can shake it either large, shaking like this, and just let the bells do the work for you. And this will not use that much energy, so your wrist will be less tired. Or you can, like I showed you, do it very quickly like this. So during the Badarak, there are some few moments where the Kshots moves sides. Almost always the Kshots on that side of the altar does nothing. He doesn't have to move too much. The one on this side, however, has to move a couple of times. And actually, the one on that side has to move only once during the Badarak. So let's say you're a Kshots on this side. When you're on this side, there are some moments during the processions, it's basically during the processions. The gospel procession and the chalice, the Eucharist procession. When you see the Kshotsagir, when you see the Purvaragir, the Purvaragir and the Momagir, go to the other side of the altar, follow them. Simply move to the other side and take your position next to the other Kshotsagir. During the processions, you're always behind, like I said, behind the action, behind the important figure, the person, or the important object. In the case of Sulpaspas, the procession for the gospel, the deacon will come, the candle, so it's always the purva then it's the candles, then it's the deacon, or it's a deacon during the Badrak who does the procession, but if there's a bishop, might be a priest, whoever's doing the procession, and then you're behind them. So wait for the deacon to start moving, and then you can follow behind him. When it comes to going behind the altar, halfway, so if you're on this side of the altar, this is your position, when you get behind the altar, just turn around and go back to your spot. Same thing, exact same thing goes for the Eucharist procession, which occurs basically after Habadan, when all the deacons line up with the gospel raised up, chanting the Nicene Creed. Shortly after that, you'll see the Purvaragir and the Momagir, the candle holder and the censer, again come to this side of the altar, and you follow them, take your spot again, the exact same thing. Now, the only time where this side of the altar, the side of the Kshots, has to move to the other side is during Kshots. This occurs right after Koki Astuzo, which is when the Purvar changes sides. You'll see the Purvar, that's his position. He's going to come over here. Stand right here, and that's almost like a cue. The deacons will line up. They will say Arakelot Sepots, the line of remembrances of the saints. After that, you go back, and Kshots begins. So before that's chanted, you see that all the deacons start kissing the altar. You will also kiss the altar. As you kiss the altar, after lining up, you're going to be lined up like this. Kiss the altar, and go to the other side. You will line up here. Instead of that same thing on that side, just on this side of the altar. And when the chant is done, you can go back to your spot and put the Kshots back. Depends on the tradition, of your parish. The candle and the purvat have to go down to replace the candle and replace the charcoal in the purvat. So most people also, the Kshots go down with them. The fan bearers go down with them. But since it's a short hymn, so during Armenian is when the altar servers leave, besides the deacons singing, you can stay on the altar. Depends how your church does it. But in our church, all the candle holders, the purvagir, the Kshotsakirs, all the deacons besides the Abak Sargalak, the archdeacon, who's singing Armenian Tokvitkum, descend from the altar. And when Haymed begins, we come back onto the altar, grab your Kshots, back to your position, exact same thing. Haymed is being sung, you do your Kshots. And another note is that when you're moving from sides of the altar, keep doing Kshots. Just like for processions, if you're doing Kshots, you see the Purva you go, just raise your Kshots like this, and go to the other side. That's basically it. That's pretty much everything they have to do as a Kshocakir in the Armenian church. I hope this was a very educational video for you. If there are any questions that I forgot to address, please leave them in the comment section. I'll try my best to answer them as quickly as possible.